When the $6 Million Man hit TV in the 1970s, it wasn't just a sci-fi show. It became a cultural obsession. But behind the slow-motion leaps and iconic sound effects was chaos. A real NASA crash, young fans trying to become bionic, and even a real mummy mistaken for a prop. These 15 creepy facts will change the way you see the show forever. Number 1. A real mummy found on set. Imagine being on set, filming a funhouse scene, and stumbling upon what looks like a prop mannequin. No one thinks twice. After all, props are everywhere. But when a crew member accidentally knocks the mannequin's arm off, something horrifying is revealed. It wasn't a mannequin. It was a corpse. Yes, an actual mummified human body. His name was Elmer McCurdy, an outlaw shot in 1911 after robbing a train for just $46. Instead of being properly buried, his embalmed body was sold to a carnival, then passed from sideshow to sideshow for decades, ending up in wax museums and haunted houses. Over 60 years later, he somehow wound up in a funhouse, used for filming an episode of The $6 Million Man. The cast and crew were horrified. The truth hit like a thunderclap, history and Hollywood colliding in the creepiest way possible. McCurdy's body was later laid to rest in Oklahoma, buried under 2 tons of concrete to make sure no one ever exploited him again. To this day, fans call it one of the eeriest discoveries in TV history. Number 2. Lee Majors nearly died doing his own stunts. If you thought Steve Austin was tough, wait until you hear what Lee Majors endured behind the scenes. He wasn't just playing a superhero. He risked his own body to make the character believable. Majors insisted on performing nearly all his own stunts. That meant the helicopter jumps? That was him. The rooftop falls? Him. The brutal crashes into walls? All Majors. Producers begged him to let doubles handle the danger, but he refused. And the toll was heavy. Cracked ribs, torn muscles, sprains, even a tailbone injury so painful he couldn't sit for days. Yet Majors laughed it off, joking that he deserved $6 million just in hazard pay. What's remarkable is that he never complained, never slowed down. His determination gave the show its grit. Fans believed in Steve Austin because, in many ways, Lee Majors was bionic, pushing himself beyond human limits. Number 3. The crash in the opening was real. You've seen it 100 times. The opening credits, Steve Austin's spacecraft spiraling out of control, the narrator declaring, "Gentlemen, we can rebuild him." It's iconic. But here's the part that still makes jaws drop. Those crash scenes weren't staged. They were real. The footage came from a 1967 NASA test flight of the Northrop M2F2 lifting body aircraft. During the test, pilot Bruce Peterson lost control. The craft smashed into the desert at 250 miles per hour, flipping violently 6 times before coming to a stop. Peterson somehow survived, but the crash left him severely injured and blind in one eye. Producers discovered that this harrowing footage was in the public domain, and they used it as the centerpiece of their show's opening. Every week, millions of viewers watched real disaster footage without realizing it. They thought it was just movie magic. Think about that. A man nearly lost his life in a horrifying crash, and his suffering became the backdrop for one of television's most famous intros. It gave Steve Austin's transformation a haunting authenticity, but at a chilling cost. And now maybe, I guess you'll never look at that intro the same way again. Number 4. The mustache fans hated with a passion. By season 4, the producers thought Steve Austin needed a little refresh. Something small, something subtle. Their idea? A mustache. At first it seemed harmless. Lee Majors grew a thin mustache, and the character of Steve Austin appeared on screen with his new look. But the reaction from fans was immediate and brutal. Viewers hated it. Letters poured into the network, mocking the change and insisting that the mustache ruined their clean-cut hero. It was shocking how fast the backlash spread. This wasn't a plot twist. It wasn't a scandal. It was just facial hair. And yet, audiences revolted. To them, Steve Austin wasn't supposed to look like a fashion experiment. He was their bionic man, rugged, heroic, and timeless. Within weeks, the mustache was gone. Producers shaved it off, quietly hoping fans would forgive the misstep. And they did. It became one of the strangest lessons in TV history. Sometimes, the smallest cosmetic change can shatter the illusion of a beloved character. Steve Austin wasn't just a role, he was an image, and even a mustache was enough to nearly destroy it. Number 5. The original Steve Austin was a killer. When you think of Steve Austin, you picture the charming, heroic bionic man, always ready to save the day with a smile and slow-motion punch. But the truth is, the Steve Austin we fell in love with on TV was never supposed to exist. The series came from a 1972 novel called Cyborg by Martin Caidin. In the book, Austin was no friendly hero. He was cold, detached, and terrifyingly efficient. He carried out missions with little regard for morality, crossing lines without hesitation. Imagine James Bond stripped of his charm and humanity, just a weapon, built to obey. That was the real Steve Austin. He was bitter, furious about losing his limbs, and haunted by trauma. Nightmares consumed him. Resentment burned inside him. Caidin's Austin wasn't someone you rooted for. He was someone you feared. When producers adapted the book, they realized television audiences wouldn't accept a human machine with no heart. So they rewrote him, softened his edges, and made him likable. By the time the series aired, the government assassin had been reborn as a family-friendly superhero. So, few fans realize how close we came to watching a totally different show, a darker, grimmer tale where Steve Austin was more machine than man. Number 6. Steve Austin fought Bigfoot. For real. Ask any fan of the $6 Million Man about their favorite episodes, and chances are they'll bring up Bigfoot. It was campy, bizarre, and absolutely unforgettable. But what makes the story legendary is who played the towering creature. None other than wrestling icon Andre the Giant. On screen, Bigfoot was a terrifying adversary, tossing Steve Austin around like a rag doll. But off-screen, Andre was famous for his gentle, kind personality. Well, gentle, but with an appetite that shocked everyone. Crew members told stories of him devouring a dozen eggs for breakfast, chasing it with steak and chicken for lunch. And his drinking? One night he allegedly downed 106 beers. Yes, 106. Everyone loved him, from the catering staff to the fans who couldn't get enough of the wild storyline. Later, the role was passed to Ted Cassidy, best known as Lurch from the Addams Family, keeping Bigfoot alive as a recurring foe. It sounds ridiculous now. A bionic man fighting Bigfoot. But at the time, it was television gold. And it cemented Andre the Giant's place not just in wrestling history, but in the strangest chapter of sci-fi TV. Number 7. Lee Majors was almost replaced over money. In 1977, fans had no idea just how close they came to losing Lee Majors as Steve Austin. Behind the scenes, a contract dispute left producers panicked. Majors was refusing to work until his demands were met, and the show was at risk of losing its star. So they did the unthinkable. They started scouting replacements, a then-rising actor named Harrison Ford. But at the time, executives dismissed him, saying he didn't have the qualities of an action star. Another was Gil Gerard, who would later play Buck Rogers. And perhaps the wildest option of all, Olympic champion Bruce Jenner, long before transitioning to Caitlyn Jenner. With Jenner's athletic background, some thought it was almost bionic. In the end, Majors returned, the crisis was averted, and Steve Austin stayed in safe hands. But the thought of anyone else playing the role is almost unimaginable today. Looking back, it feels surreal. The studio nearly replaced one of TV's most iconic heroes with a group of names who, at that point, were either untested or totally unexpected. And all because of money. Number 8. When science was dropped for super strength. Originally, Steve Austin wasn't supposed to be Superman. The plan was simple. Keep his abilities grounded in plausible science. Enhanced speed, sharper vision, better hearing, fine. But super strength? That was too far. Or so they thought. When the first episodes aired, producers noticed something odd. Kids weren't reenacting the hearing scenes. They weren't pretending to see far away. No, they were pretending to lift cars and smash walls. The audience had spoken. They didn't want a slightly improved man. They wanted a Superman. So halfway through season 1, writers gave in. Suddenly, Steve Austin could flip vehicles, tear doors off their hinges, and punch through steel. The science was nonsense, but it didn't matter. The ratings soared. Even Lee Majors admitted that once strength was added, the show became more fun to film. Overnight, the $6 Million Man shifted from sci-fi realism to comic book fantasy, and fans loved it. They didn't care if it broke the rules. They just wanted to believe that somewhere out there was a man who was stronger, faster, and better than anyone alive. Number 9. Farah Fawcett accidentally created a hit song. Sometimes the biggest hits come from the smallest moments. Case in point, one casual phone call at Lee Majors' house. Majors' then-wife, Farah Fawcett, was chatting with songwriter Jim Weatherly. In passing, she mentioned she was packing for a midnight flight to Houston to visit her parents. Weatherly froze. To a songwriter's ear, that phrase was pure gold. In less than an hour, he had a song written. Originally, it was meant for Cissy Houston, Whitney Houston's mother, but she didn't like her name in the title, so Weatherly changed it. Midnight Flight to Houston became Midnight Train to Georgia. The track was eventually recorded by Gladys Knight and the Pips, and the rest is music history. It became a smash hit, winning a Grammy and earning its place as one of the most iconic soul songs of the 1970s. And to think, it all started with an offhand remark in the home of TV's Bionic Man. Without Steve Austin and Farah Fawcett, one of the greatest soul records of all time might never have existed. Number 10. The Forbidden Love That Made TV History. Steve Austin and Jamie Summers weren't just TV characters. They became science fiction's first power couple. Lindsay Wagner was cast as Jamie, Steve's love interest and fellow cyborg. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, spawning the Bionic Woman spin-off. Despite airing on different networks, the shows frequently crossed over, sharing villains and story arcs. A wedding episode was even planned but never filmed. Years later, reunion films gave fans closure when Steve and Jamie finally married. Their romance broke new ground for serialized storytelling and paved the way for today's crossover TV universes. Number 11. Toys that made kids feel superhuman. In the 1970s, no toy matched the power of Steve Austin. In 1975, Kenner released the $6 Million Man action figure. And it wasn't just another doll. This was groundbreaking. It came with a magnifying bionic eye you could look through, a roll-up arm skin panel revealing hidden machinery, and even a grappling hook backpack. Kids could perform pretend surgery and actually feel like they were upgrading their hero. The toy line exploded. The Bionic Man outsold even some Star Wars figures in its first year. When Bigfoot appeared on the show, Kenner made a Bigfoot toy, and shelves emptied. Soon, Jamie Summers joined, creating one of the very first shared universe toy franchises. For kids, it wasn't just play. It was transformation. They weren't pretending to be Steve Austin. They felt bionic. Today, collectors pay thousands for mint-condition sets. But for those who grew up with them, the real value was priceless. Number 12. The sound effect that saved the show. Close your eyes and think about Steve Austin running in slow motion. What do you hear? That unmistakable na-na-na-na sound that made his every move feel superhuman. But here's the shocker. It wasn't there in the beginning. In the first episodes, Steve would leap fences, lift cars, and smash doors in total silence. And it just felt flat. Audiences didn't know what was missing, but something didn't click. Producers scrambled for a solution. The answer came not from fancy technology, but from old-fashioned creativity. Engineers used electric guitars, tape loops, distortion, and slowed-down effects to create a futuristic, almost mechanical rhythm. Suddenly, Steve's movements had weight, tension, and drama. The sound turned ordinary stunts into iconic television moments. By season 2, it became inseparable from the show. Every slow-motion leap, every punch, every car flip came with that sound. Fans loved it so much that it outgrew the series, popping up in parodies on The Simpsons, Family Guy, and beyond. What started as a last-minute fix became one of the most recognizable audio cues in TV history. Without it, Steve Austin might have been just another action hero. With it, he became unforgettable. Number 13. The lawsuit that nearly killed Bionic. The word bionic feels inseparable from Steve Austin. But here's the shocker. It almost got the show sued out of existence. When the $6 million man became a phenomenon, suddenly the word bionic was everywhere. In magazines, toy commercials, and even playground conversations. But there was one big problem. A biomedical company that manufactured real prosthetic limbs claimed they had used the word first in their advertising. To them, bionic wasn't fiction. It was their trademark. The company filed a lawsuit, demanding the show stop using it. Imagine the panic in the studio. They'd built an entire franchise on that single word. Without bionic, Steve Austin was just mechanical. The case never went to trial. Instead, an out-of-court settlement was reached, and the show was allowed to keep using the word. Ironically, the legal fight only made bionic more famous. It spread faster, landed in dictionaries, and became a part of everyday speech. Think about it. A word that started as medical jargon became a pop-culture juggernaut because of a TV show and a lawsuit. Today, bionic is still everywhere. But few fans know it was almost ripped away from Steve Austin. Number 14. The failed Bionic Boy spin-off. After the success of Steve and Jamie, producers wanted more. In 1978, they created The Bionic Boy. It centers on a teenage athlete who received implants after a near-fatal accident. The pilot was filmed, complete with super speed, strength, and reflexes. But test audiences didn't connect. Critics called it childish and a watered-down copy of the original. Networks passed, the pilot was shelved, and the young actor soon left the industry. It remains a forgotten footnote in bionic history, proof that not every prototype upgrade survives. Number 15. $6 million wasn't enough to build him. $6 million. In the 1970s, it sounded like a fortune. Enough to rebuild a man, replace flesh with machines, and make him better, stronger, faster. Kids repeated it on playgrounds like it was the price of becoming a superhero. But here's the twist. Today, that number wouldn't even come close. Adjusted for inflation and real-world technology, Steve Austin's rebuild would cost more than $35 million. That's the kind of money governments pour into secret weapons or cutting-edge aircraft. To compare, an F-35 fighter jet runs about $148 million. Suddenly, Steve Austin feels like a bargain, almost a budget superhero. But the truth is, the number was never about math. It was about imagination. $6 million bought us one of TV's greatest legends, and decades later, the dream it represented, that humanity could be rebuilt into something extraordinary, remains priceless. From real NASA crashes to legal battles over the word bionic, the $6 million man was a mix of science fiction, danger, pop culture, and pure imagination. Which of these secrets shocked you the most? The real crash, the mummy discovery, or Steve Austin's darker origins? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden stories behind your favorite classic shows.